Jackson's just starting to turn into a bit of an afterthought for all of these clubs, isn't he? Welcome, Blue Believers, to another episode of the Stamford Sink, where we are syncing up with everything Chelsea FC. And you know what? I'm starting to feel sorry for Jackson at this point, man. Like, I do think the best thing for him to do is to leave, but we've just gone from like him being like targeted by everyone and it's Jackson this, Jackson that, and then all of a sudden he just keeps falling down the pecking order. And what is starting to feel like is going to happen is Jackson is going to be picked up by whoever doesn't get Benjamin Sesko or Ollie Watkins. So alongside Jackson today, we're going to talk a little bit more about Alejandro Garnacho, because I've given up on not talking about him because it's probably just going to happen, isn't it? And let's just be in front of it. We're also going to talk about a new youth player that Chelsea have signed, alongside concerns clubs have about signing Christopher Nkunku. But before we get into it, if you are enjoying the content and would like to see more, please do me the distinct honour of liking or sharing the video, subscribe to the channel, or just roast me in the comments, whatever gets you through your day. Right, so let's start with Jackson, right? Let's start with Jackson. Like I said, man, I'm just starting to feel sorry for him at this point. It was like, at the start of the window, it was all Jackson for 100 mil, Jackson swap deal for Morgan Rogers, Jackson wanted by Manchester United, Aston Villa, Newcastle, Jackson. And I'm kind of surprised that we've gotten all of this way and there's not been talks of like agreements being made and, you know, clubs really being in for him and stuff. Although he is constantly floating around the news, it seems to be at the behest of everything else that's happening in the transfer window. So the latest news regarding Jackson is we're going back to the Aston Villa links, right? So supposedly Manchester United not interested because he's too expensive for what they think they'd be getting. There's been links about Juventus and they kind of came and went. There were some links to Newcastle, but you know, we'll get into that, the Benjamin Sesko stuff with that in a minute. And yeah, Aston Villa is the most recently resurfaced piece of news again. And what that is basically only saying as well is they will look to go for Jackson if Ollie Watkins ends up leaving. And again, there's been some talks about like, oh, maybe Ollie Watkins can leave because they can make a little bit of money for him and he's not as young as he used to be. But again, there's been no like serious massive links with other clubs. But what we're seeing now that is if Ollie Watkins does leave, Aston Villa would probably be interested in going in for Jackson. They're one of the only clubs that I haven't seen been linked with Benjamin Sesko, to be fair. So it does kind of track. They've already shown some interest in him. Obviously, there was all that talk about the Morgan Rogers Jackson swap, which obviously just isn't going to happen now. And as I've mentioned previously, he used to play for Unai Emery before, right? So they know each other, they understand how each other work, and they've both got lots of nice things to say about each other, and it's all very, very lovely. But yeah, man, just starting to feel a bit bad for Jackson. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, I'm not even really thinking about him in terms of the squad next year, honestly, as far as I'm concerned. And I may end up with egg on my face about this, but it just feels like he's already gone. But maybe that does change a little bit now Mark Gu's been sent out on loan, right? But I don't know. I mean, we're basically used to only having one striker anyway, and we've already got two. And I do still maintain I worry about what might happen if we keep Jackson and either him or Liam Delap is not going to get enough game time and they are going to start complaining about it. With all the news swirling around Garnacho, and obviously we brought Jamie Gittins in, there also doesn't seem to be that potential experimental opportunity to put Jackson out on the left wing, because if we do bring in Garnacho, then we're going to look pretty stacked in that area. So yeah, man, it just seems like he's turned into a bit of an afterthought, doesn't it? So Man U were at one point interested, Newcastle were at one point interested, but they are now tussling with each other over the signature of Benjamin Sesko from Red Bull Leipzig, and they're talking about 80-90 million for him. Do you know what I mean? And if we were talking about 100 million for Jackson, that was never going to happen. But what it well could end up being is a domino effect, right? So let's say Newcastle get Benjamin Sesko. Maybe that means that Man United go in for Ollie Watkins, and then Aston Villa come in for Jackson. Do you know what I mean? It just feels like it seems to be lined up there. The last few kind of half-decent strikers on the market at the moment. Man United have been credited with some amount of interest in Ollie Watkins prior to this as well, so that's not a crazy thought to happen, but it does feel like all of these moves kind of rely on what happens with Ben Sesko. Also starting to feel a bit sorry for Red Bull Leipzig, man. They are being pulled apart this season. But I guess we will just wait and see what happens. Like I said, in my head, I feel like Jackson's already gone. Tell me what you think in the comments, guys. Like, I'm well up for having a chat about, is Jackson worth keeping around, even if we go out and buy Garnacho, and the fact that we've obviously got these other two strikers already? With Mark Gu going out on loan, does that actually leave us a little bit lighter than we'd like to be for a Champions League campaign? Do you think that having Nicolas Jackson around will just be a good thing, even if someone starts complaining about not getting enough game time? Drop your thoughts down below. I'd love to know what you think. But we move on and let's have a little chat about Alejandro Garnacho. So I broke my duck in talking about Garnacho, really, and I released a video the other day essentially accepting that the talks are very, very real. There are lots of sources kind of indicating that Chelsea are really interested in him. And in that video, just to give myself some sort of idea about whether he's going to work or, you know, how does he stack up to the other guys, I created a brand new series that I'm going to do going forward called Who's the Better Baller. And in this episode, I compared Alejandro Garnacho at Man United, Jadon Sancho with us last season at Chelsea, and Jamie Gittins' last season at Dortmund. It's a fun little game where we take the stats, we give them point values, and we come out with a better baller at the end of it. Go and check that video out if you haven't already. So Garnacho, right, like aside from all of the statistical stuff that I've put in that other video, like what else does he bring to the table? For like 21, 22 years old, the absolute one thing you can say is, as of right now, he's experienced. In the last 3 seasons, Alejandro Garnacho has featured in 143 games across all competitions. So he's been called on a lot. Do you know what I mean? He's been called on a lot. The managers that played him a lot obviously saw something in him. And if I'm honest, I do feel like the majority of the reason that he's even thinking about coming out at the moment, I mean, as far as I can remember, this only started even being a thing when Amorim came in. And that just seems to be squarely because Amorim does not play with wingers, right? So they kind of chose Amorim and his system at Man United, and Garnacho looks to be a casualty of that. Garnacho is a byline attacking winger, right? That is just kind of his thing. He can feature out on the right, but he predominantly does his best work out on the left, and he doesn't really fit into either of the other 2 roles that are available to him in Amorim's squad. Those being left wing back, right wing back, or one of those 2 kind of half pocket spaces behind the striker. He likes to leg it up and down the byline, and he's a really direct attacking threat, but that doesn't seem to fit too well into Amorim's ultimate tactical vision, and that started to seem kind of obvious when Amorim got his foot in the door at Man United to begin with. So as far as output, it's not terrible, right, for a really, really young player, and you got to think, like, all of those seasons in the Premier League means that he does understand what's being asked of him. And you could probably safely argue that Maresca is a better manager for someone like Garnacho than who he's had up until Amorim whilst he's been at Man United anyway. So at Man United, in 143 games, Garnacho has managed 26 goals and 23 assists in all competitions, which is roughly 1 goal contribution every 3 games. So that's not enough for elite wingers, right? You know, your top guys are like somewhere between 0.7 to 1 goal contribution per game. So he's not there yet, but he is still young. Do you know what I mean? He's still a really, really young lad. So maybe if he's brought in and trained the right way, I don't know. I'm just copium at this point. It's just copium at this point, isn't it? We're going to get him for, like, again, I've seen 40 mil being the general touted amount for him now. That is actually a fairly reasonable price in today's market. Like I said, personally for me, if we're going to keep on splashing money, I'd rather reinvest in other areas of the squad, like goalkeeper and centre-back. But like I say, if it's just going to happen, I need to get on board with it, because at the end of the day, as soon as someone steps foot in Chelsea, then you have to support them, right? We're not Arsenal fans, no hashtags. Okay, so the only other thing about Garnacho that was a bit of a potential worry is the attitude thing, right? So there's, you know, obvious, and for me, this is kind of juxtaposed with the fact that Garnacho felt like a bit of an afterthought as soon as Amorim stepped in the door, and maybe he started acting up because he knew that he needed to leave because he wasn't going to get the game time, and he doesn't want to just go out on loan. Do you know what I mean? He wants to do a Cole Palmer and make the right move and go and be trusted somewhere. So already, even without, you know, the next bit of news, the attitude stuff, well, like, tell me in the comments if I'm wrong. Was there attitude problems with Garnacho before Amorim came? Because I seem to remember it being all sunshine and flowers, and it's only in like the last 6 months that he's kind of been a bit of a problem. Now, he has been a bit of a problem as well. Do you know what I mean? The Rashford thing, and do you know what I mean? He's just made it really, really, really obvious that he's not happy. He complained about not playing in that Europa League final against Spurs, being that he'd contributed so much, you know, in that Europa League campaign up until that point. So he's not afraid of being outspoken. But from the Chelsea side, this is what I've seen. Chelsea have supposedly completed background checks on Alejandro Garnacho and feel confident that should they sign him, his attitude won't be a problem. So I don't really know what that means. Are they hiring PIs, or is, you know, someone got a mate at Carrington and being like, what's he like in training? I don't really know what that means, but it is something that I've read that supposedly, you know, to make sure that the attitude thing isn't a problem, checks have been run to make sure that if we buy him, then we're only really looking at the player and we're not looking at the potential problematic attitude and personality issues that might ruffle the rest of the squad. And I suppose that's a good thing, because although I haven't seen the same news about it, there's also been attitude conversations about Xavi Simons, right? And we seem like we're getting really close to that. And if we're running background checks on Alejandro Garnacho, you would have thought that that's just something that they do. Do you know what I mean? So if we're bringing in players that have supposedly got attitude issues and are problematic, looks like we've got our team of in-house PIs to go and dig up the dirt and find out what's going on. And I'm sure we wouldn't be signing these players if we really thought attitude was going to be a problem. And for the final little bit of incoming news, Chelsea have just recently snapped up young 18-year-old Crystal Palace Academy product Jessy Derry. He's 18, he's an attacking midfielder slash winger, and he hasn't had any Premier League time yet, but he's very well thought of in the academy circuit, and he's recently just featured for England's under-19s in the Summer Euros tournament, I think it was, and everyone seems to be raving about him at that level. So we've gone in and we've got him on a free because his contract ran out, and it's just good, isn't it? It's just good. At the end of the day, if you sell this guy for 3 million next year, you've made profit. So, you You know, a young, promising academy talent, you can't really go wrong with that if you're not paying anything for him. Maybe we never see him on the books. I'm still kind of hoping we're going to see a bit more of Reggie Walsh this season, and by the sounds of it, they're similar kind of players. But yeah, chalk another one up for the kids. We've got another one on the books. And let's just hope he doesn't turn into another Amari Kellyman or Carney Chukwuemeka or another one of those many players. Remember Izzy Brown when we got him from West Brom as well? Do you know what I mean? There's been so many massively touted young superstars that we've gone in for and got that have ultimately just gone on to do pretty much nothing. So let's hope at the very least we can just make a few quid off this one if he doesn't explode and find his way in the team. Okay, cool. So I'm going to wrap up today's video with a little bit of news about Christopher Nkunku. So I reported the other day that Bayern Munich is probably the most likely destination for him, but there's been some developments since then. There have been some developments since then. So Inter Milan are interested in Christopher Nkunku, and I think an Italian team would be a great shout for him. Do you know what I mean? That kind of position he plays, and he's obviously really good at finding the back of the net, and Inter Milan seems like it might be a smart choice. But supposedly they are concerned about his injury record, and when you break down the stats, you can kind of see why. So Christopher Nkunku has missed 54 games through injury since the 22-23 season. That's a lot of games, man. You know, in 2 seasons, that's obviously most of those will have been at the start of his first proper season with Chelsea when Pochettino was here. He was out for a really long time. But there have been myriad injuries that have kept him out for spits and spats in and around that as well. It has painted this picture of a player that potentially has injury worries. Now, to be fair, he's actually been pretty solid for us this season in terms of fitness. He has missed games and stuff, but for the most part, we've been able to call him when relied on, and to the point where he's actually spent a lot of time fit and just not getting into the team. So if recency bias is anything to go by, it's probably not so much of an issue, but when you do look at the bigger picture from when he comes to Chelsea, he has missed a lot through injuries, and we're asking for 50 million for him. Do you know what I mean? So it makes complete sense that any club is going to be a little bit like, oh, I'm not so sure about that one. So I don't know how much that hurts our prospects of being able to sell Christopher Nkunku. We really need to get rid of him. Do you know what I mean? Keeping him around the squad for another season is just not a good idea. Even when he was kind of playing a bit, do you know what I mean? He was getting all those Conference League games and stuff. He stopped blowing up the balloon and he looked really disinterested on the pitch, and the optics were just not good. Is this just one where we're going to have to suck it up and just take a bit of a loss on him, sell him for 35, 40 million? I don't know. We bought him for 50 mil and we've had him for 2 seasons. Amortization says that we probably wouldn't lose too much money if we sold him in and around there. But obviously Blueco and the brass are really keen to make profit to avoid all this stuff with UEFA and make sure we can, you know, bring the people in we want to bring in. And Christopher Nkunku is on big wages as well, because he came in before that whole structured earn your package improvement thing became a thing. Do you know what I mean? So don't know, man. Don't know. Christopher Nkunku, it's a bit of a shame. What I'm worried about is ending up with another Raheem Sterling situation where we end up loaning him out to someone because that's the only way they'll take him, and we end up subsidising a load of his wages. And I don't know. I don't like loaning players out when it's not for development. Do you know what I mean? I think if we're going to loan a player out, then it needs to be your Mark Hughes and, you know, your guys that have gone to Strasbourg, and, you know, people that you're either looking to increase their value or you're just looking to, you know, they're academy players that you're looking to, like, you know, trying to get them some game time and improve them. But when it comes to using all your loan spots to, you know, for the likes of Ben Chilwell and Raheem Sterling and, you know, these kind of guys, even last season with Axel Disasi and Joao Felix, do you know what I mean? We've sent so many players out on loans when really the only reason for that is we just don't have room for them in our squad. And I think that's just a waste of what has already become a much tighter loan structure, which is completely our fault because we ruined that for everyone. But yeah, I just don't want to see Christopher Nkunku be the next Ben Chilwell or Raheem Sterling. Do you know what I mean? I think the best thing we can do is try and sell him. And if we've got to take a bit of a hit on the money to do that now, ultimately it's about squad harmony, isn't it? That's what it comes down to. Because if Christopher Nkunku is hanging around the changing rooms, that's not good. And if he's out on loan somewhere soaking up a load of wages, and that still creates problems where we can't necessarily give improvements to whoever we want, or, you know, it just kind of affects how things work in general. So that's it, guys. I'm going to wrap it up there for today. Thank you very much for sticking around. If you are available tonight, then head over to the Blue Lounge's YouTube channel. I will be featuring on a panel hosted by the Blue Lounge that contains myself, Blue Clouds Media, and Worldwide Chelsea. We're getting together tonight to talk about all things Chelsea, and it is going to be a great time. So if you are around, then come and check it out. It's going to be fun. P.S. Let me know in the comments if my new glasses make a massive difference. I can still see that if I look up, you can still kind of see the reflections, but I've got the anti-glare coating on now, and it does seem to have done a bit of a job. They're blue. Now they're blue, but that does seem kind of less intrusive. Let me know if you still find that distracting, and if so, I will do my best to try and restructure my lighting rig to try and minimize it a little bit more. Nice one, guys. Have a wicked day. Catch up with you very, very soon. Take it easy. Peace.